Welcome to the Depths of Motherhood podcast. I'm your host, Danielle. In season 8, we're exploring what it means to reweave the village, to return to connection after generations of being told we have to do it alone. And truthfully, I'm still finding my way too. Like many of us, I'm saying yes to a new way, learning to notice my old patterns of survival and finding my way back to a life that aligns with the heart. I hope that each episode feels like you're sitting around the fire with a group of friends in raw, honest conversations. I'd love for you to get involved in this season, so please write below in the chat or come to join us on our social media page. And if you go to the show notes, you're going to find my newly released book, Reclaiming Circle, a guide to holding women's circles. Thank you so much for being here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes through in this season. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I hope that you and yours are doing well. We've just had a really big move. We've moved countries, and so there's a slowness as we settle in. And yes, there's a delay in these episodes that have been released because I'm trying to honor our rhythm, or trying to find a rhythm anyway. So here we are, and today I'm really looking forward to this conversation to talk about food. And it's not in the way that we're maybe used to talking about food, like through diets or rules that there should be, or how to optimize what we eat. This is a conversation about our relationship with what we consume, with the food, with the seeds, with the earth, with our community, through our body, through history, through something that feels both deeply personal and undeniably collective. The intention here is not to give any answers, but to open something, to awaken curiosity, to look at how our relationship with food has been shaped over time, not always by choice, and feeling into that, feeling into what it might mean to come back into connection, to become more conscious about the foods that we're receiving and consuming, with the land, with our bodies, with one another. I am speaking from within this as well. This is something I am still exploring, still unlearning, and still finding my way back to, noticing my own tendencies, my own patterns when I become unconscious. And I share more about my story later on in this conversation with bulimia and how I found this relationship with food over the years, and how it's deeply helped me to feel part of something much, much bigger. You could hear in my voice then, as soon as I said the word bulimia, my throat just tightened up, because actually I haven't spoke about it so much before. And naturally, the stories are held within my body. So you might notice that too. As we go through this conversation, you might notice the body contracts or opens, or thoughts come through, or memories. And let's just say that they are not separate from this conversation, that they're part of it. So welcome all the things that come through. You might want to write them down to remember. See if there's any patterns that come forth from today. So the more that I sit with food, the more I realize that my relationship with it did not begin with me. So it's much deeper. This is connecting now through our ancestral line, all of the relationships that our ancestors have had with food up until this point is being shaped by systems, by history, by disruption, and by choices that were made long before we were here. Some of these shifts were subtle, gradual, and almost invisible, and others were direct, forceful, and deeply violent. When I began listening more closely to Indigenous stories, knowledge, just feeling into what was being shared, one thing became very clear. food systems were not only changed during colonization, they were deliberately targeted. When we think about North America, the mass killings that happened of the buffalo were not by accident. It was a deliberate strategy to weaken plains nations by removing a primary food source and forcing dependence on rations. In many colonized regions, traditional crops were replaced with monocultures and cash crops that fed empires rather than community. Land was taken, access was restricted, and people were pushed away from the ecosystem that they had lived in relationship with for generations. And when that relationship is broken, something much deeper than hunger begins to happen. Dependency is created. And so when we start to look at different ways where there's been a disconnect, we can also come to hold space for famine, starvation in the world. We're often taught to see famine and starvation as natural, as if it simply happens like a natural disaster or something. But when we look closely and we get a bigger picture and we ask the questions, a different story starts to appear. Again and again, hunger is shaped. In Ireland, food was exported while people starved. In Gaza, food exists, but it's being restricted. The path has been blocked to reach the people. In Sudan, conflict separates people from land and food from systems, making nourishment inaccessible even when knowledge remains. So, in cases like these, hunger, starvation is not a natural disaster. It's an interruption of access, of relationships, of the natural flow between land and body. And then another side of this, another layer, one that many of us are living inside. When there is abundance of food, yet nourishment is not guaranteed. If you look at statistics of malnutrition in places like the United States, there is a contradiction. Food is everywhere, and yet nutrient deficiencies exist because malnutrition is not only the absence of food, it is also present because the food that may be available does not carry life in the same way. Soil that has been depleted through industrial farming, which produces crops with lower nutrient density, food that is processed, altered, stabilized, and transported across miles, thousands of miles in the air, on the boat. By the time it reaches us, it is often far removed from what it once was. The body feels that when the life is depleted from the foods that we eat. And we might not even realize what is happening. We might not even realize that the food that we're eating has been poisoned or that the nutrients are lower because of its pathway, because of how it's being raised, because of how it got to us. But maybe there's a feeling that something is up. And then because we don't know, we might project it onto another area of our life. So this is just a conversation to open things up. Another layer that I've been thinking of, the emotional layer, about why we reach for certain foods when we're feeling out of balance or we're feeling depleted, or tired, emotional, when we're grieving, when maybe for some of us it'll be reaching for sweetness. Sweetness is not harmful. It offers us something. It offers us comfort. It offers us energy, a boost in energy. Thinking about when a baby feeds, when the baby is breastfeeding, there is warmth, there is closeness, there is safety, and there is a sweetness all at once. The body learns that sweetness is connected to being held, to being nourished, to being safe. And even if you weren't breastfed or your children weren't breastfed, there's this same quality in the formula as well. The warmth, the sweetness, the density, the comfort of being held and fed. So there's this connection there. And then later in life, when we reach for sugar, for comfort foods, it's not only about the taste, it can be about memory as well, about trying to return to something that felt safe or to find something that maybe we didn't have. So, all forms that we are often given now don't carry that same depth. They give a quick response, a moment of relief, but maybe not the nourishment the body is actually seeking. And so the reaching continues. It's like that the part of us doesn't quite get met no matter what we consume because it's an emotional connection or an emotional need that is arising. I'll tie this into my personal story as well, because I lived with bulimia from my early teens, around 13, I can remember it beginning, to my early 20s. And it shaped my thoughts, my days, my relationships with my body, with my food, with my people, with my family, going to social events, everything. It wove into every single thing. And there's many layers to my story because I was using a lot of energy in my days. I was in the military. I was doing physical exercise, sometimes for 5 or 6 hours a day, maybe more the early years, just like constantly on the move, constantly being pushed, constantly in a stress response. And I needed something to feel safe, to feel held, to feel grounded, and also to nourish me. My energy levels were low, but I also had a very tough relationship with my image. I was extremely afraid of how I might look if I consumed a pizza. What would happen if I ate all that? How would my body change? These are the things that were going through in my mind. But because I was so depleted, when I went to eat, I could not stop. So I'd be eating so much. And then the fear would come in, which would bring about me to vomit and remove the food from my body. And I wouldn't do this every day. It was more like a routine, a habit that happened on the weekends when it was like I was relaxing. I wasn't at work. I was in a personal environment and oh my God was let down. And in that release, it was like I was just trying to consume what I could to feel held again. And I didn't even realize at the time that I needed support with this. I would make so many excuses and I would hide it. Nobody knew, actually. And something interesting happened when I was around 22. I got married very early on. This is my ex-husband. And so we got married at 21. And I came off the pill around this time and everything started to change. I came off the pill, but I also started going to meditation classes and doing yoga, and my relationship with my body started to change. I started to read a lot of self-help books, and I realized that I could shift my relationship with my body and with food. So that's where my journey began, with rebuilding and healing my relationship with my body, with food, with my own needs that I hadn't spent time with. And for many years, it was a force. It was really forcing not overeating. And then something beautiful happened, and it's really hard to pinpoint it. But there was a gap that was created between the craving, between this like deep desire to do this habit that I've been doing for so long. And there wasn't one day, it was just like gradual until I realized, oh, I haven't done that for a while. And then I left the military when I was like 25, I think, and just things started to change. I changed my environment. There was no stress on me, no one telling me when to wake up, what to like, coming in to inspect my room, how to just exist, no one judging me. And I felt a softness. So my environment changed. My relationship with myself started to deepen in a more heart led way. And the people around me were different. They really saw me and wanted to like feel me. And we started to eat together. I had a retreat in France and we would eat all together when volunteers came or when people came to stay at the retreat. And it became community. It became this moment to join one another. And people have spent hours cooking, pouring their life force into this food. And a lot of the food we started to grow on the land. And I could never, like, the feeling that I had was, yes, this is nourishing me. This is nourishing my body. And I felt this deep sense of gratitude begin to awaken inside of me. And the craving started to just dissolve, that craving for more, because I was content, because the foods were more nutrient dense, because the community was there, because I was held. And this was a huge shift for me. And when I became pregnant, something even deeper softened inside me. There was just a deeper pull to the nourishment my body needed at that time, which was much different because I'd been a vegan, vegetarian, and whether I was vegan or vegetarian, I was flowing between the two for 12 years. But when I got pregnant, my body was craving meat. So I started to have bone broth and things, and I felt my body just deeply absorb it. And in postpartum, that became even clearer because my body was asking to be replenished, to be cared for, to be fed in a way that allowed for healing and integration. And I remember just feeling so much gratitude to receive my food and how like felt like all my cells was just sucking in these nutrients. And yeah, that was a really deep shift for me because it showed me that the body still knows how to move towards nourishment when it's given space and time and gentleness and curiosity. And what was interesting is during my postpartum phase, I actually had thoughts of the patterns I had with bulimia because I noticed I was eating a lot more than usual. But then the voice inside of me that could see or that was in strong relationship with food, with body, with everything, it was like, it's okay. Like, I know that is still there. I know there's a wound for you, but you're healing, you're nourishing yourself, you're feeding your baby. And I was so grateful to hear that voice because it was new to me to be mothered whilst I was mothering as well. So yeah, if anything's come up for you with what I've said, feel free to reach out to me. I know this is a story that many of us hold with food in different ways. So I'm happy to be here if you want to share. And what I was going into just in my personal story with growing my own food, I noticed how I had such a disconnect with the food that I was having because it was usually bought from a supermarket and in plastic. I had no idea where it came from. There is abundance, but very little relationship. Food without a story, food without context, food that has been separated from the land, from the hands that grew it, from the systems that once made it meaningful. And I keep coming back to this grief that I hold right now because of this disconnect from the land, because of how far we've come from planting the seeds to watching to caring for it, to watching it grow, to receiving the fruits, and the whole cycle of the seasons of then giving back to the land to nourish the soil, that whole cycle in that relationship and taking only what we need. Yeah, it's still, I grieve that because I'm not living that right now. I'll go into ways that we can reconnect with our food and the land in simple ways towards the end of this conversation. But yeah, when there is that disconnect, it becomes easier to turn a blind eye to when the land is being used or extracted or manipulated because we don't see the land as part of us. We don't see ourselves as part of nature. So when we're disconnected from our food, it becomes easier for us to be shaped as well, for our attention to move to something else that seems more important than this land that is giving us life, from the waters being clean, from the air being clean. So it's like easy to control humans when they don't feel they have a connection to the nature that we are a part of. And this is really where I begin to feel something else because it's not only about what has been broken. Like the grief is valid, the curiosity is valid, but there's also something that is awaiting to be remembered. I think about women like Vandana Shiva, who has spent decades protecting seed sovereignty in India, working with women farmers to preserve traditional seeds against corporate control, seeds that carry history, resilience, and the ability to adapt to local land. I also think about the Green Belt movement, where women have planted millions of trees. I think it's 50 million trees over the years, restoring land, food sources, and independence in the face of environmental destruction. I think about the Indigenous women across Turtle Island who are revitalizing traditional food systems, bringing back practices of growing, harvesting, and preparing food in relationship with land, even after generations of violence and disruption. And then I also think about these smaller, quieter movements, community gardens in cities, seed libraries, local farms choosing different ways of growing closer to relationship with the earth. These are not small acts. They are acts of remembering that if we all start to see where we can begin, just baby steps, we'll start to reclaim it back. We just have to shift our focus a little bit and remember what really matters. Remember what we've forgotten, and also remember what we are planting for the future generations. Literally and metaphorically, our intentions, where are we planting them seeds? And what seeds are we protecting? This is going to nourish the next generations. So if we just call it back right now, just come back to our body, feel into your body as you breathe, and let's think really simply. Where can we begin? I believe we begin with our senses, letting ourselves be inspired by food again, noticing what smells good, what tastes good when you are present with it, what makes your mouth water, what feels nourishing, what feels cozy, not just in the moment, but afterwards. How does this food make you feel? Looking at the food, noticing when you look at certain foods, how that make you feel when you go to choose your fruits and vegetables. Really look at them, spend time with them before putting them in your basket. Allow your taste to shift slowly so it's more present to the flavors that are there, and giving yourself space, slowness to recognize the way that your body is interacting with these foods. And so once we start to say yes to slowness, to more conscious eating, to relationship with our food, we can begin to look at other ways to how we can take these baby steps. Because we don't need to do everything at once. It can be overwhelming, and then we can just distract and just like let other people deal with it. But there is ways that make it fun and interesting and inspiring. We can just begin where we are. It might be that you can grow something on your windowsill or plant some seeds or maybe some herbs and just starting to tend to the plant kingdom within your home or in your garden, and keep it small, keep it realistic. What do you have the capacity to care for right now? You might take some more time as you're visiting the supermarket, or maybe there's a farm close by that you can visit that has local foods, and you can get to know the people who are growing the food and sharing this food, and really see them and either verbally or internally offer them gratitude for how they are tending to earth, to nature, and bringing this food forward that will be rich in nutrients. And again, look at the food, smell it, see the colors, and see what wants to come home with you. You might start to see if there is a community garden that you can get involved with. Something simple. I've just booked the season with a 4x4 plot so we can start growing. I could do it in my back garden, but I felt like I'm homeschooling my daughter, and I wanted us just to have a space that we can go and get to know people because we are new and be inspired as well by how other people are growing their garden. And I think one of the most beautiful things, whether we eat the food or not, is we see how the plants interact with one another. We see what happens when we sing to them or when we give them too much water or too little water. We see how we feel if one of them thrives or if one of them dies. And just noticing these patterns in nature, it brings us back into rhythm, life, death, rebirth, and seeing how plants interact with one another. Some are really friendly and some don't like being next to each other. So it's just a learning curve, a journey of learning and remembering. And I think the beautiful thing about growing our own food is that we just learn new ways to tend along the way, and how, even with everything that we know, the environment might shift that affects how the plants grow. So there might be insects passing through the town that destroy all the crops, or that year might be really sunny, or there might be a lot of rainfall. We start to see that even with the knowledge that we have, we are still going to be learning because the environment will constantly be changing, and it brings about conversation in community. We can share the wisdom that we have. We can share little tips. We can try them out. So it's not so much about, for me anyway, right now, it's not so much about what it is that I get to consume that is very exciting, but it is about this journey of remembering and learning and getting my hands in the soil, and also the commitment, the responsibility, because all relationships take that commitment and responsibility. It takes us showing up, of listening. And that is where there is that reciprocity here, because there is a communication taking place. And these are qualities in a human that I really want to develop in myself and also within my family as well. And letting my daughter be in places where that is important to people. Another good way as well is just simply just going outside and exploring the land and taking photos and drawing the plants that are around and being curious. If you have any edibles, obviously check. But this is another way just to open our eyes and our ears and our nose and all of our senses so that we can see what's around. Yes. So anything else? If you can think of anything else, write in the comments below what comes up for you when I'm sharing this. Yeah, okay, I'll share one more thing. Another simple way is starting to use herbs, and just start with one. We don't have to overload it. If you're anything like me, you want to know everything yesterday. You might feel a pull to buy all the herbs, get all the jars. But actually, I am really trying to do this here, just taking it slow. What have we got? Getting to know that herb, that plant. And usually, what I have been doing over the years is taking a week with a plant in a tea and really getting to know it, getting to see how does it feel in my body, when is the best time of day for it, just noticing what happens when we interact. And then I might start to blend. But actually, the best moments I've had with connecting with plants and teas is the slow relationship that come, like building the relationship slowly is what I'm trying to say. And yeah, that feels for me really intentional and beautiful. And I learned so much that way. And just bringing it back to food, when we're cooking in our homes, creating almost like a ceremony, protecting the space. So before you begin, make sure that the kitchen is as clean as it can be at that moment. And maybe lighting a candle. I love lighting a candle when I'm cooking, when I'm cleaning, because I feel like I'm not alone. I feel like I've got backup. And I remember as well that this act is sacred. It brings an energy into my home. So, yeah, when I'm cooking, I'm starting to connect to the food. I'm tuning into gratitude for the nourishment that it can offer me and my family. And then when I'm cleaning, I am intentionally shifting energy, moving energy out of my home that is ready to go outside and just welcoming in that freshness. And this is honestly a game changer for me, just doing this in my life, of seeing these moments as ceremonies instead of trying to prepare some food when my kitchen is an absolute tip. And I know that sometimes it's not possible. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm saying I'm trying. Sometimes my kitchen is a tip and it feels like everything's on top of one another. And in them moments, I'm not trying to pretend that I can have a deep relationship. I'm trying to get through that moment, feed the family, get some space, go to bed. And hopefully the next day there'll be a fresh start. So it is all just about intention and trying, and also just not really, don't worry too much about it if it's not going right or you feel like there is just too many things overwhelming you. It might just be that cup of tea that's the start. It might just be you just going outside and saying, yes, I want to deepen my relationship. So, not about shame or guilt, about a door opening, about a relationship deepening in a gentle, curious way, and trusting how it unfolds and how it opens. So I am sitting in this, I'm still learning, I'm still unlearning, and I'm still returning and remembering. One thing that I'm beginning to understand is this is not about fixing, like I mentioned. I could have so many ideas, so much guilt, so much shame that could come through me. And then I remember this has been a plot for thousands of years to disconnect us from ourselves, from the food, from the land, from community. So, yeah, that really helps. I'm like, yeah, we're doing our best because as we disconnected from the food and the land, made for fragile ground for our communities because food would have been such an important part to our lives, especially through the seasons when we were growing our own food, when we were harvesting together, when we were eating together, when we were sharing the loads of the relationship with the land, depending on how the environment was, sharing the joys, the celebration when there was an abundance of food. Food was nourishment and it was medicine and it was also joyful. All of these things. So that is another way to remember things. If we welcome people in and we feed them, we're slowly tending to this relationship that has been lost. Oh gosh, I feel like I want to go on something else right now because you might see as well in your own families where I can think of somewhere we've gathered, we've eaten, but there is like in my family growing up, sorry, when before I had my own family, just like unintentional eating and just like overly consuming and not really knowing again the pathway of the food or how it would make us feel, and me just feeling like complete crap after I've eaten. And so these things have shaped at a very young age my relationship with food and community. So now what's really important for me is to have food eaten together as a moment of, again, ceremony. No phones at the table, no TV, coming to the table to start gathering in and everyone supporting, preparing, clearing the food away. And this is a habit for us now. I can't imagine it any other way. And we do have moments where we're not at the table and we are just like needing the energy. So we're eating in random places, and that's fun too. Having picnics outside, or this time we're eating on the floor. There's ways we can shift it up to make it interesting and exciting, but seeing it as a point that we all gather, because I know there's another thing as well, is like getting everyone together. And that's what the table can do. It can bring everyone together. Like this kitchen used to be the center point in many homes, the point where everyone congregated and had conversations. And yeah, I want to welcome that back in. When I see my daughter helping me prepare food and she's curious about what is this food? How will this food nourish me? Where will it come from? My heart is so open because I know that we are on this journey together. And I can see how my intentions are weaving into our family and is beautiful. Yes, I'm going to leave that one there. And I would just like to share for this last moment, if you can take some time with yourself after we've finished chatting here and feel in sensation how this conversation has moved inside of your body. Do you feel energy rising up? Do you feel it contracted in a certain area? Is your breath deep or is it shallow? Have you noticed your shoulders up towards your ears, or maybe your chest is opened? So, in sensation, how are you feeling after having this conversation? And maybe your mind can tell you some emotions like, oh, I'm feeling inspired and curious, or I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm feeling some guilt and shame because I haven't had this relationship with food yet. Just notice. And I recommend writing them down, because wherever you see things where you're being a bit hard on yourself, or there's emotions that feel like towards the guilt and shame spectrum, or maybe a disconnect or disassociating because of the shame and guilt or the overwhelm. If it's on that side of the spectrum, take some time with them and remember why this disconnect has happened in the first place through generations of trauma, disconnect, change, and say, it's okay. You're here. You're remembering. Be soft, be gentle with yourself, and then see one small step that you can do. You don't have to change everything, just one small step. And if you're on the other end and you're curious and excited, again, what is the one small step that you'll take? It doesn't have to be anything extravagant. One small step. And I assure you, if you sit with this topic, you are going to start to see things come up in your daily life. You'll start to see where communities are gathering. You start to notice when people are connected through food that they're eating. You'll start to notice how food makes you feel when you eat food, when you're feeling balanced in your body, when you eat food, when you're feeling angry or resentful or whatever the feeling. You'll see that your body also shifts with how you're feeling emotionally, because if you're feeling stressed, your digestive system is going to take a nice little contraction. Or it might be that the blood flow is going to your hands and your feet if you're so stressed that you want to fight or run or freeze. So, noticing that when we're in a soft place, when we're in a place of balance, when we're feeling at peace in ourselves, whatever that is, the food can be received. It can move through our body. We can take what we need, and it can go all the way through our system until we go to the toilet. Oh gosh, I could go on for ages with this. but yeah, just start noticing, start observing. And thank you so much for being here in this conversation with me. I'm going to try to start putting out recordings more regularly. So hopefully in the next week. But until then, thank you so much, and sending love to you and yours. And remember, you can reach out anytime.